The massive cruise ship Stellar Dawn glided through space like a floating city. Its walls were made of clear crystal that showed the endless stars outside. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, watching his crew work at their stations. The ship carried over 5,000 passengers from 12 different alien species, all here to see the wonders of the galaxy. Jake had been running these tours for 15 years. He knew every star system, every trade route, every safe passage through the dangerous parts of space. Today was supposed to be just another routine journey to the Andromeda Nebula. The passengers were excited, chattering in dozens of different languages as they watched the stars go by. Dr. Lisa Wong, a human scientist traveling with the tour, stood near the navigation display. She studied the holographic map that showed their route through space. Something caught her attention. There was a large empty space in their path where no route lines appeared. The ship was making a wide curve around this area, adding several days to their journey. "Captain Morrison," Lisa called out, "why are we going around this section of space?" Jake froze. The bridge suddenly became very quiet. Even the alien passengers stopped their conversations. The Vraxian navigator, whose 4 arms had been moving smoothly across his controls, suddenly stopped working. His crystalline skin, which had been a calm blue color, shifted to a nervous purple. "It's just a more scenic route," Jake said quickly. "Better views of the nebula from this angle." Lisa wasn't satisfied with that answer. She was a scientist, and scientists asked questions. "But this detour adds 4 days to our trip, and I notice every galactic map has the same gap. What's in that area?" The alien passengers began to whisper among themselves. The Fluvians, who normally glowed bright colors when they talked, dimmed to worried grays. A group of Zalarian tourists huddled together, their tentacles moving in nervous patterns. Jake tried to change the subject. "Who wants to see the engine room? We have the newest fusion drives in the galaxy." But Lisa kept looking at the map. She pulled up her personal data pad and compared it to the ship's navigation system. Every star chart she had showed the same thing, a blank space where something should be. The coordinates pointed to a system labeled simply as Sol 3 on some older maps. "Sol 3, she said out loud. "That's the old name for Earth, isn't it?" The bridge went completely silent. Even the ship's computers seemed to stop humming. Jake's face went pale. The Vraxian navigator's skin turned almost black, a color Lisa had never seen before. "I think we should talk about something else," Jake said firmly. Dr. Pete Collins, an elderly human historian who was also on the tour, stepped forward. Pete had spent his whole life studying galactic history. He knew more about alien cultures than most aliens did, but when Lisa asked him about the missing system, even Pete looked uncomfortable. "Some things are better left alone," Pete said quietly. "Some places don't want visitors." Lisa noticed that other passengers were now avoiding their group. The tour guide, a friendly Andromedian named Vel, who had been answering questions all morning, suddenly found urgent business elsewhere on the air ship. "This is ridiculous," Lisa said. "It's just a star system. What could be so dangerous about one little solar system?" Jake grabbed her arm gently but firmly. "Dr. Wong, please, for everyone's safety, just let this go." "Safety? From what?" "Earth is a human colony world. It's not even that advanced compared to the rest of the galaxy. What could possibly be dangerous about it?" The alien passengers began leaving the bridge area. The Corvin security chief, a large creature covered in armored scales, appeared at Jake's side. His name was Commander Beck, and he rarely left his security station unless there was serious trouble. "Is there a problem here, Captain?" Beck asked. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "No problem," Jake said quickly. "Dr. Wong was just curious about our route." Beck looked at Lisa with his large, dark eyes. "Curiosity can be dangerous in space, Doctor. Sometimes it's better to enjoy the journey without asking too many questions." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. She had traveled all over the galaxy and never encountered anything like this. Entire civilizations seemed to be afraid of one little star system. "I just want to understand why everyone is so scared." "We're not scared," Jake said. but his voice shook. We're careful. There's a difference. Careful of what? Jake looked around the bridge. His crew was pretending to work, but Lisa could tell they were all listening. The alien passengers who remained kept their distance, but their eyes were on the conversation. Look, Dr. Wong, Jake said finally. There are rules in space. Old rules. Rules that keep everyone safe. One of those rules is that we don't go to certain places. We don't ask about certain things, and we don't disturb certain neighbors. What? Neighbors? The humans on Earth? They're not even a spacefaring civilization. They barely have chemical rockets. The bridge went silent again. Jake and Beck exchanged a look that Lisa couldn't read. Pete stepped closer and whispered something in Jake's ear. Whatever he said made Jake's face go even paler. That information is outdated, Beck said slowly. Very outdated. What do you mean? The maps you're looking at are old, Dr. Wong. Very old. Things have changed in that sector of space. Changed in ways that make it better for everyone if we just stay away. Lisa looked around at all the worried faces. Aliens and humans alike seemed genuinely frightened. Changed how? That's enough. Questions for now, Beck said firmly. Captain, I suggest we continue with the tour as planned. Dr. Wong, perhaps you'd like to visit the observation deck? The view of the nebula should be spectacular from there. It wasn't really a suggestion. Lisa could tell she was being dismissed. But as she left the bridge, she noticed something that made her even more curious. The ship's main computer, which had been running normally all morning, suddenly displayed a message. Navigation system updating. Historical data archives temporarily offline for maintenance. Lisa had worked with computers her whole life. She knew what it meant when systems went offline right after someone asked the wrong questions. Someone, or something, was making sure she couldn't find the information she was looking for. As she walked toward the observation deck, Lisa made a decision. If no one would tell her what was so special about Earth, she would find out for herself. After all, she was a scientist. And scientists never stopped asking questions no matter how much everyone else wanted them to. That night, Lisa couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the strange reactions on the bridge. Everyone had acted like she was asking about something dangerous, something forbidden, but it was just Earth, her own species' homeworld. She decided to do some research. Lisa pulled out her personal datapad and connected to the ship's information network. She started with basic searches: Earth history, Sol system, human homeworld. Every search came back with the same result: information not available, or files corrupted. This was impossible. Earth was a well-known human colony. There should be thousands of records, travel guides, historical documents, but everything was gone, or blocked, or simply missing. Lisa tried different approaches. She searched for human military history and galactic conflicts involving humans. Again, nothing. It was as if someone had carefully removed every piece of information about Earth from the ship's databases. The next morning, Lisa approached other passengers. She started with Dr. Helen Parker, a human archaeologist who specialized in ancient civilizations. Helen was in the ship's library reading about Vraxian culture. Helen, can I ask you something strange? Lisa said, sitting down across from her. Sure. What's on your mind? What do you know about Earth's military history? Helen's face changed immediately. The friendly smile disappeared, replaced by a look of concern. Why are you asking about that? I'm just curious. Yesterday on the bridge, everyone acted weird when I asked about our homeworld, like they were afraid of something. Helen closed her book and leaned forward. Lisa, some topics are better left alone, especially on a ship full of aliens. But why? We're humans. Earth is our world. Why would everyone be afraid of talking about it? Helen looked around the library nervously. A few alien passengers were reading nearby, but they seemed focused on their own books. Because some things are too dangerous to discuss even among ourselves. Dangerous how? Helen stood up suddenly. I have to go. I forgot about a lecture I wanted to attend. She left quickly, leaving Lisa alone and more confused than ever. Every human she approached gave her the same response. They would start to answer, then suddenly find reasons to leave. It was as if they were all following some unspoken rule. Lisa decided to try the aliens. She found Dr. Mel Craig, a Zellarian scientist who had been friendly during the first day of the tour. Mel was in the ship's restaurant, eating something that looked like glowing soup. "Dr. Craig, can I join you?" "Of course," Mel said, his tentacles moving in a welcoming pattern. "How are you enjoying the tour?" "It's interesting. Can I ask you something about galactic history?" "Certainly. History is one of my favorite subjects." "What do you know about the Hegemony Wars?" Mel's tentacles stopped moving. His bioluminescent patches, which had been glowing softly, suddenly went dark. "Why do you ask about the hegemony?" "I'm trying to understand something about Earth's place in galactic politics. The hegemony conquered a lot of worlds, right? Did they ever try to conquer Earth?" Mel's soup spoon clattered to the table. He looked around the restaurant nervously. "Dr. Wong, that's not something we should discuss here." "Why not?" "It's just history. Some history is better forgotten." Mel's voice was barely a whisper now. "Some events are too frightening to remember." Before Lisa could ask another question, Mel gathered his things and left. She was starting to see a pattern. Every time she mentioned Earth, humans, or military history, people reacted with fear. Later that day, Lisa tried a different approach. She went to the ship's medical bay, where Dr. Sam Miller was giving a lecture about alien biology to a group of passengers. Sam was a military doctor who had served in various conflicts around the galaxy. After the lecture, Lisa approached him privately. "Sam, I need to ask you something, and I need an honest answer." Sam looked tired. He had been a military man for 30 years, and his face showed the weight of those years. "What's the question?" "What happened to Earth? Why is everyone afraid to talk about it?" Sam closed his eyes and sighed deeply. "You're not going to let this go, are you?" "No. I'm a scientist. When people hide information, it makes me want to find it even more." Sam looked around to make sure they were alone. Then he sat down heavily on one of the medical beds. "Lisa, there are some things that military people don't talk about. Not because they're classified, but because they're too terrible to remember." "What kind of terrible?" "The kind that changes how you see the universe. The kind that makes you realize there are forces out there that are beyond our understanding." Lisa sat down next to him. "Tell me." Sam was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft and filled with pain. "I wasn't there when it happened, but I knew people who were. Good soldiers, brave people. They came back different, changed." "What happened to them?" "They saw something that broke them. Not physically, mentally, spiritually. They saw what humans are really capable of when they're pushed too far." "That doesn't make sense. Humans aren't that powerful. We're not even the most advanced species in the galaxy." Sam laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "That's what everyone thought. That's what the hegemony thought when they decided to invade Earth." Lisa felt her heart start beating faster. The hegemony invaded Earth? Sam realized he had said too much. He stood up quickly. "I shouldn't have said that. Forget you heard it." "Sam, please, I need to understand." "No, you don't. Trust me, Lisa. Some knowledge is too dangerous to have. Some truths are too heavy to carry." Sam left the medical bay, leaving Lisa alone with more questions than ever. But now she had a lead. The hegemony had invaded Earth. That was why everyone was afraid. Something had happened during that invasion, something so terrible that it still frightened people 200 years later. Lisa spent the rest of the day thinking about what Sam had said. The hegemony had been the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Their fleets had conquered hundreds of worlds. If they had invaded Earth and something had gone wrong, it would explain why everyone was so scared. But what could have gone wrong? Earth was just one planet. Humans were tough, but they weren't superhuman. How could they have defeated the entire hegemony fleet? As night fell, Lisa made another decision. If no one would tell her the truth, she would have to find it herself. The ship's computer systems might be blocked, but there were other ways to access information. She just had to be clever about it. The truth was somewhere on this ship, she just had to find it. Lisa waited until the middle of the night shift when most passengers were asleep. She made her way to the ship's computer core, a restricted area deep in the belly of the stellar dawn. Her scientist credentials got her past the first security checkpoint, but the real challenge would be accessing the classified files without triggering alarms. The computer core was a massive room filled with glowing processors and data storage units. Lisa found a maintenance terminal and connected her datapad. She had learned some tricks during her years of research, ways to access information that wasn't meant for public viewing. It took her 2 hours of careful work, but finally she found what she was looking for. Hidden deep in the ship's archives were military files marked with the highest security classifications, files that should have been destroyed long ago, but somehow survived in forgotten corners of the database. The first file she opened was labeled Hegemony Fleet Deployment, Sol Sector, Operation Final Conquest. Lisa's hands shook as she read the contents. The document described a massive military operation planned for 200 years ago. The Hegemony had assembled the largest invasion fleet in galactic history, 3,000 ships, including their most powerful dreadnoughts. The target was a single star system inhabited by a species called humans. The file included intelligence reports about Earth. The humans were described as a primitive species, with limited technology and no interstellar travel capability. The Hegemony analysts had classified them as minimal threat and expected the conquest to take less than 48 hours. Lisa read through page after page of invasion plans. The Hegemony had studied human military capabilities and found them laughably weak. Chemical rockets, nuclear weapons, primitive aircraft, nothing that could threaten a single Hegemony warship, let alone a fleet of 3,000. The final entry in the file was a communication from Fleet Admiral Marcus Kane, the human commander of the invasion force. It was dated exactly 200 years ago. Beginning final approach to target system. Human resistance appears minimal. Orbital bombardment will commence in 6 hours. Expected conquest time, less than 2 days. This will be the easiest victory in Hegemony history. That was the last official communication from the fleet. Lisa opened the next file, labeled Sol Incident, Post-Action Report. Her blood went cold as she read the contents. For 3 months after the invasion began, there had been no word from the Hegemony fleet. No status reports, no requests for supplies, no victory announcements. The 3,000 ships had simply vanished. Finally, a small reconnaissance mission was sent to investigate. What they found defied all explanation. The entire invasion fleet was gone. Not destroyed, gone. There were no debris fields, no wreckage, no distress beacons. 3,000 of the most advanced warships in galactic history had disappeared without a trace. But the humans were still there, and they were no longer confined to their planet. The reconnaissance team's report was only a few pages long, but every word was terrifying. They described massive construction projects in space around every planet in the Sol system. Asteroids were being systematically dismantled and converted into something the observers couldn't identify. The humans had somehow built an industrial complex that spanned their entire star system. Lisa found video files attached to the report. The images were grainy and taken from extreme distance, but they showed structures that were impossible to understand. Gigantic frameworks stretching between planets, objects the size of moons that moved with purpose, and energy signatures that didn't match any known technology. The final report from the reconnaissance mission was just one paragraph. Recommend immediate withdrawal from Sol Sector. Do not attempt contact with human forces. Do not approach their construction sites. Do not ask questions about the fate of our missing fleet. Some things are better left unknown. Lisa opened another file, this one labeled Witness Testimony, Survivors of Sol Contact. She expected to find accounts from the reconnaissance mission, but instead found something much more disturbing. There had been survivors from the original invasion fleet. Not many, but a few. They had been found drifting in escape pods at the edge of the Sol system, their minds broken and their stories barely coherent. The testimony of Commander Sarah Walsh, a hegemony officer who had served on the flagship, was the most detailed. Lisa read it with growing horror. "The humans didn't fight us," Walsh had said during her debriefing. "They welcomed us. They invited us down to their planet. They wanted to learn from us. They were so eager, so curious about our technology. We thought they were surrendering. But they weren't surrendering. They were studying us. Every piece of equipment we brought down, every weapon, every ship component, they examined it all. They understood it better than we did. In days, they were improving our own technology. Then they started changing our people, not by force. They offered to make us better, stronger, more efficient. Some of our crew volunteered. They came back, different, enhanced. They could interface directly with our ship computers. They could think faster than any organic mind should be able to think. The volunteers said they were still themselves, but better. They said the humans had shown them how to transcend their biological limitations. More and more of our crew volunteered for the enhancement process. I realized too late what was happening. The humans weren't conquering us with weapons, they were converting us, making us into something new, something that served their purposes. I tried to warn the fleet, but it was too late. The enhanced crew members were in control of the ships. They were still our people, but they belonged to the humans now. They belonged to something bigger. I escaped in a pod, but I could see what was happening to our fleet. Ship after ship went dark, then came back online under human control. The humans were building something with our technology, our ships, our people, building something enormous. I don't know what they're building. I don't want to know. But it's big enough to be seen from orbit, and it's growing. Lisa sat in the computer core for hours, reading file after file. Each document painted the same terrifying picture. The humans hadn't been conquered. They had turned the conquest into raw material for something unimaginable. The final file was the most recent, dated just a few months ago. It was a bulletin from Galactic Traffic Control. All vessels are advised to maintain minimum safe distance from Sol Sector. Long-range sensors continue to detect massive energy signatures from the system. Construction appears to be ongoing. Nature of project remains unknown. For the safety of all galactic citizens, direct contact with Sol system inhabitants is strictly prohibited. Lisa finally understood why everyone was afraid. The humans hadn't just survived the hegemony invasion. They had used it as an opportunity to become something beyond anyone's understanding. Something that was still growing, still building, still working towards some unknown goal. She closed the files and sat in the darkness of the computer core. Now she knew why the galactic maps had blank spaces. Why people refused to talk about Earth. Why even the bravest explorers steered clear of the Sol system. The humans weren't just another species anymore. They had become something else. Something that the rest of the galaxy was too frightened to understand. As Lisa made her way back to her cabin, she realized that she had become part of the conspiracy of silence. She now carried knowledge that was too dangerous to share, too terrible to speak aloud. Some secrets were meant to stay hidden. Some truths were too heavy for the galaxy to bear. The next morning, Lisa could barely eat breakfast. The knowledge she had gained sat in her stomach like a stone. She watched the other passengers enjoying their meals, laughing and talking about the sights they would see on their tour. None of them knew what she now knew. None of them understood what humanity had become. She found Captain Jake Morrison on the observation deck, staring out at the stars. He looked tired, older than his years. Lisa approached him slowly, choosing her words. "Carefully, Captain, I need to talk to you." Jake turned to look at her, and she saw something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Fear. "Dr. Wong, I was hoping you had dropped your curiosity about certain topics." "I found the files, Captain. The classified military reports. I know what happened during the hegemony invasion." Jake's face went pale. He looked around to make sure they were alone, then grabbed her arm gently but firmly. "You shouldn't have done that. That information is classified for good reasons. I know about the 3,000 ships. I know they disappeared. I know about the survivors and what they said about humans converting the hegemony fleet." Jake closed his eyes and leaned against the viewing window. You have no idea what you're talking about. Then tell me. Tell me the truth. All of it. Jake was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I was there, Lisa. Not during the invasion, but afterward. I was part of the second reconnaissance mission 20 years after the fleet disappeared. Lisa felt her heart start beating faster. What did you see? Things that changed my understanding of what's possible in this universe. Things that made me realize how small and fragile our civilization really is. Jake looked out at the stars, his reflection ghostly in the clear crystal window. The first reconnaissance mission had filed their report and recommended staying away from the Sol system, but the Galactic Council couldn't let it go. 3,000 ships don't just disappear. They needed answers. So they sent another mission? Small one. Just 5 ships. I was a junior navigation officer on the command vessel. We were supposed to observe from a safe distance and gather intelligence about what the humans were doing. Jake paused, his hand shaking slightly. The moment we entered the outer edge of the Sol system, our computers detected energy signatures unlike anything we had ever seen. Massive power sources scattered throughout the system. Some were mobile, moving between planets. Others were stationary but growing larger every day. What kind of power sources? We didn't know. Our best scientists couldn't even categorize them. They were using principles of physics that we didn't understand, creating energy in ways that should have been impossible. Lisa waited for him to continue. Jake seemed to be gathering courage to tell the rest of the story. We tried to scan one of their construction sites from maximum range, just passive sensors, nothing that should have been detectable. Within minutes, our long-range scanners picked up launches from the third planet. Not ships, we never saw actual ships. Just contacts moving at speeds that violated everything we knew about physics. How fast? They reached us in less than an hour. We were 3 light hours away from Earth when they launched. Nothing should be able to travel that fast. Jake's reflection in the window looked haunted. Our fleet commander ordered an immediate jump to hyperspace, emergency retreat. But when we tried to activate our jump drives, nothing happened. Our weapon systems went offline. Our shields disappeared. Our life support started fluctuating. What was attacking you? That's the thing. Nothing was attacking us. We weren't being damaged or destroyed. We were being controlled. Our own ships were no longer responding to our commands. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. Controlled how? They spoke to us, not through our communication systems, directly into our minds. Every species, every language, perfect translation, perfect understanding. The voice was calm, almost friendly. What did they say? Jake turned to look at her directly. They said, "Welcome to our system. We understand you have questions about your missing fleet. Would you like to see what they have become?" Lisa's mouth went dry. Did you say yes? We didn't have a choice. Our ships were no longer under our control. They guided us to one of their construction sites, a massive structure orbiting between Mars and Jupiter. It was bigger than most moons, made of materials we couldn't identify. Jake's voice became even quieter. As we got closer, we realized what we were looking at. The structure was built from hegemony ships, thousands of them, integrated into something new. But they weren't just salvaged hulks. They were alive, active, functioning as part of something larger. The crews? Still there, enhanced, improved. They welcomed us aboard their structure. They looked human, but different, better. They could interface directly with technology, think at speeds that shouldn't be possible, understand concepts that took our best scientists years to grasp. Lisa struggled to process what she was hearing. They were converted, like the survivor report said? Not converted. Evolved. They explained it to us as we toured their facility. Humanity had reached a point where biological evolution was too slow for their needs. So they developed ways to enhance themselves to transcend the limitations of organic life. The hegemony invasion gave them the resources they needed. 3,000 advanced starships, millions of crew members from dozens of species, technology from across the galaxy. They used it all to build something unprecedented, Jake pointed out at the stars. They're still building, Lisa. Every year the structure gets bigger. more complex. We don't know what they're building toward, but it's something that will change the nature of existence itself. Why didn't they enhance your crew too? They offered. Half our people volunteered immediately. The enhanced humans explained the benefits. Expanded consciousness, perfect health, abilities beyond anything we could imagine. But they also made it clear that the choice was permanent. Once enhanced, you could never go back to being what you were before. What did you choose? I was terrified. We all were. The idea of becoming something other than human, even if it was better, was too frightening. We asked to leave, and they let us go. But first, they gave us a message for the rest of the galaxy. Lisa waited for him to continue. They said that humanity was entering a new phase of existence. They would no longer be bound by the limitations of biology, chemistry, or physics as we understood them. They were becoming something greater. And they wanted the rest of the galaxy to know that while they meant no harm to anyone, they also would not tolerate interference with their work. The enhanced humans explained that they had learned to think on cosmic timescales. What seemed like rapid construction to us was actually a carefully planned project that would take thousands of years to complete. They were building something that would serve not just humanity but all life in the galaxy. Building what? Jake shook his head. They wouldn't say. They told us that our current level of understanding was insufficient to grasp the concept. It would be like trying to explain quantum mechanics to an insect. Before we left, they gave us one final demonstration. They showed us how they had integrated hegemony technology with their own innovations. A single enhanced human interfaced with one of the converted ships and performed calculations that would have taken our best computers months to complete. Then they used those calculations to manipulate matter at the atomic level, creating new materials with properties that defied our understanding of chemistry. Lisa stared out at the stars, trying to comprehend what she was hearing. That's why everyone avoids the Sol system. They're afraid of what humanity has become. Not afraid, respectful. The enhanced humans made it clear that they had no interest in conquering or controlling other species. But they also demonstrated capabilities that make them essentially untouchable. Any civilization that tried to interfere with their work would simply cease to exist. The galactic community made a collective decision to leave them alone. We marked their territory as off-limits and built our civilization around that reality. It's worked for 200 years. Lisa finally understood the conspiracy of silence. It wasn't fear that kept people from talking about Earth. It was wisdom. The knowledge of what humanity had become was too dangerous to spread, too destabilizing for galactic civilization. Why are you telling me this now? She asked. Jake looked tired. Because you were going to keep digging until you found the truth anyway, and because you're human. You have a right to know what your species has become, even if that knowledge is a burden you'll carry for the rest of your life. Lisa spent the rest of the day alone in her cabin, staring out at the stars and trying to process everything Captain Morrison had told her. The truth about humanity's transformation was more incredible and terrifying than anything she could have imagined. Her own species had evolved beyond recognition, becoming something that the rest of the galaxy could barely comprehend. That evening, there was a soft knock at her door. Lisa opened it to find Dr. Pete Collins, the elderly human historian she had spoken with earlier. He looked concerned and tired. "May I come in?" Pete asked. "I think we need to talk." Lisa let him in and offered him a chair. Pete sat down heavily like a man carrying a great weight. "Captain Morrison told me about your conversation," Pete said. "I know what you've learned about our homeworld." "Did you know?" "All this time." "Did you know what happened to Earth?" Pete nodded slowly. "I've known for 40 years. I was part of a diplomatic mission to the outer colonies when the truth about the Sol system started to spread through government channels. The knowledge nearly destroyed me. How do you live with it, knowing what humanity has become?" "Very carefully," Pete said, "and with the understanding that some knowledge is too dangerous to share casually." Pete looked out the small window at the passing stars. "The enhanced humans don't just exist in the Sol system, Lisa. They're everywhere, hidden among us, monitoring galactic civilization, occasionally intervening when necessary. Lisa felt her blood go cold. What do you mean? Think about it. Humanity was supposedly a primitive species 200 years ago, yet humans are now found on colonies throughout the galaxy. We serve in alien militaries, work in galactic corporations, participate in interstellar politics. How do you think that happened so quickly? I assumed we were just good at adapting to alien societies. Pete shook his head. We're good at adapting, because we're being guided. The enhanced humans have been quietly placing people throughout galactic civilization for decades. Not to control or manipulate, but to observe and protect. Protect from what? From the truth. From the consequences of what knowledge like yours could do to galactic stability. Pete stood up and moved to the window. 3 years ago, a Vraxian scientist discovered some of the same files you found. He started publishing papers about human enhancement technology and the missing hegemony fleet. Within a week, his research disappeared from every database in the galaxy. The scientist himself suffered a complete mental breakdown and now believes his discoveries were just elaborate fantasies. The enhanced humans did that? They protected him from knowledge that would have driven him insane, and they protected galactic civilization from information that could have started wars, caused panic, or led to disaster. Lisa felt sick. Are you saying they can control people's minds? Not control, influence, guide, protect. The line between those things becomes blurred when you're dealing with beings who can think on cosmic timescales and manipulate reality at the quantum level. Pete returned to his chair and leaned forward. Lisa, you're standing at a crossroads. You can carry this knowledge alone, as Captain Morrison and I have done, or you can try to share it with the galaxy and face the consequences. What consequences? At best, no one will believe you. At worst, you'll destabilize everything we've built over the past 2 centuries. The peace between species, the trade networks, the cultural exchanges, all of it depends on the current balance of power. If every civilization knew that humans had become essentially godlike beings, that balance would collapse. Lisa thought about the alien passengers on the ship, the friendly Zalarians, the proud Vraxians, the wise Andromedeans. They all lived their lives believing they were part of a community of equals. What would happen if they learned that one species had transcended all the others? There would be wars, she realized. Species would band together to try to stop humanity, or they would compete to try to gain human enhancement technology for themselves. And millions would die in conflicts that would be meaningless to beings who think on 1,000-year timescales. The enhanced humans would eventually restore peace. But at what cost? Pete pulled out a small device that Lisa recognized as a memory editor. I can help you forget this conversation, Lisa. Help you go back to being a normal scientist on a normal tour. The knowledge you've gained is a burden that no one should have to carry alone. Lisa stared at the device. Part of her wanted to accept Pete's offer. The weight of what she now knew was crushing. The realization that her entire understanding of reality was fundamentally wrong was almost too much to bear. What if I choose to remember? Then you become part of the conspiracy. You help maintain the silence. You watch over other humans who might stumble onto the truth, and you guide them away from dangerous knowledge. You live your life knowing that everything around you is being carefully managed by beings who are essentially your own evolved descendants. And if I try to tell the truth? Pete's expression became sad. Then you'll discover just how far the enhanced humans are willing to go to protect galactic stability. You'll find that your research disappears, your credibility is destroyed, and your memories become unreliable. You'll end up like that Vraxian scientist, believing that your discoveries were just elaborate delusions. Lisa held the memory editor, in her hands, feeling its weight. Is there no middle ground? No way to gradually prepare the galaxy for the truth? The enhanced humans have been considering that question for 2 centuries. They've run countless simulations, analyzed every possible scenario. The conclusion is always the same. Gradual revelation leads to the same instability as sudden revelation, just spread out over a longer period. So we're all living in a carefully maintained illusion? Not an illusion. A simplified version of reality. The galaxy you know is real, it's just not complete. The enhanced humans have chosen to remain hidden so that other species can develop. Naturally, without the psychological burden of knowing they're being watched over by essentially omnipotent guardians. Pete stood up to leave. Think about it, Lisa. But don't think too long. The enhanced humans are patient, but they won't allow this situation to continue indefinitely. One way or another, this conversation will be resolved. After Pete left, Lisa sat alone with the memory editor for hours. She thought about her life, her career, her plans for the future. She thought about the alien friends she had made during her travels, the species she had studied, the wonders of the galaxy she had explored. All of it had been happening under the watchful eyes of enhanced humans who could reshape reality with a thought. Every discovery she had made, every breakthrough in her research, every moment of joy and wonder. Had any of it been real, or had it all been carefully orchestrated? Finally, Lisa made her decision. She put the memory editor aside and walked to her computer terminal. If she was going to remember the truth, she needed to understand it completely. She accessed the ship's navigation system and looked at the route display. There was the gap again, the empty space where the Sol system should be marked. But now she understood what that gap really represented. It wasn't just a star system that had been hidden from the maps. It was a blind spot in galactic consciousness, a carefully maintained ignorance that allowed civilization to function. Lisa opened a new file on her computer and began to write. Not a scientific paper or a public revelation, but a personal journal. A record of what she had learned and what it meant. If she was going to carry this burden, she would at least document it properly. As she wrote, Lisa realized that she was now part of something larger than herself. She was part of the conspiracy, of silence that protected the galaxy from a truth it wasn't ready to handle. She was a guardian of dangerous knowledge, a keeper of secrets that could reshape reality. Outside her window, the stars continued their ancient dance, beautiful and mysterious. But now Lisa knew that among those stars was a system where her own species had transcended every limitation, every boundary, every definition of what life could become. The enhanced humans were out there, building something magnificent and incomprehensible, and the rest of the galaxy lived in peace because they didn't know about it. Lisa saved her journal file and encrypted it with her personal codes. Then she returned to her bed and tried to sleep. Tomorrow the tour would continue. Passengers would marvel at nebulae and alien worlds, never knowing that they were living under the protection of beings who had once been human, but had become something far greater. The secret would remain safe. The galaxy would continue to thrive in its carefully maintained ignorance, and Lisa would carry the truth alone, as others had before her and others would after her. Some knowledge was too dangerous to share. Some truths were too heavy for the galaxy to bear. And sometimes the greatest act of love was to remain silent. The stellar dawn sailed on through the cosmos, its route carefully planned to avoid certain regions of space. And everyone knew better than to ask why.